Hello, welcome to Know the Faith, Defend the Faith. My name is William Hemsworth, and honored to have author, popular blogger Charles Johnston on the line today. Charles, how are you doing today?
Good. How you doing, William?
I'm doing well, thank you. Oh, thanks. My pleasure's all mine. Thanks for coming on. First and foremost, congratulations on the success of the book.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
So, obviously, the book we're talking about is called The Beauty of the Mass. Fantastic book, goes through the Mass from start to finish. Lots of great detail in there. And I know we were talking off air briefly, and now I gave my copy to my DRE at church, and she's going to use it in the RCIA classes this year. So just wanted to let you know that. So it's having a good impact here.
Great. I'm very glad to hear it. I've been in contact with several parishes that I've done bulk sales to, so that they could get them in the hands of their catechumens and candidates this year for the upcoming RCIA season. So I'm glad to hear it.
That's great. That's great. Now, what was the process like writing this book?
Well, really, what happened was half of my family are Catholics, Irish Catholics, and the other half's Protestant. And I was raised in kind of more of the Protestant tradition. So I converted to Catholicism a few years back in 2016, but it was at least a decade, if not decades, long process. It started back having kind of friendly arguments with my grandfather in the late 90s, who was a Catholic. And it kind of went from there. And around 2004, I kind of got serious about it. And it wasn't until 2016 I was received into the church. So it was a long process. And along the way, I'd done a lot of reading and a lot of studying. And I'd go to Mass all the time, even though I wasn't Catholic. I would go to Mass maybe 30-40% of the time, other than I'd go to church every Sunday, but a third of the time was Mass. And whenever I went with a Catholic relative, like however it would come up, we'd get talking about it, and I'd say, like, oh yeah, by the way, or they'd say something, or I'd say something, and we'd get talking about the Mass, and I'd tell them something like about some part that's more of an obscure, because I like how things work. It's not enough that something works for me. I like knowing how and why it works. And so I would explain, like, well, why they done that is it's a connection to the Old Testament. And so then one of my cousins has a son, Catherine Ann. She has a son that was getting ready for confirmation. She's like, confirmation age. And she asked me to write, because I was blogging at the time, and she asked me to write some articles about the Mass, to explain the Mass. And so it started as just shorter blog posts here and there. And then after a while, I built up enough material to where I said, I could put this together and put it in a book. And so I did, and that's where I am today.
Okay. Now, did you do any expansion on those blog articles? Any deeper research, or how'd that?
Well, I mean, like I said, I like to know how something works. So I really take something apart. Like I like to collect, especially antique firearms. Old, like 1911 Colts, really old Colts. I love, like a 1903 Fox. And the first thing I do when I buy one is I complete it in smallest details, and I just put it all back. I just like doing that. So even when I was writing the blog posts, I didn't want to just throw something out there that was just my opinion. So I would not either. I'd read both the catechism, I'd read church documents. Vatican.va is a treasure trove of information. And I would really kind of dig down to find out, because I didn't want to give my own personal opinion or spin on things. I wanted to give what church, I'm not going to lead people down Church of Charles Johnston. I want to lead them to the path to the one holy Catholic. And so I endeavored to make sure every single thing I wrote was not just factually accurate, but also well sourced and well documented. So I done that with the.
Okay. Now, you mentioned in the book that you've always had a strong connection to liturgy. What connection? What was that? What's that connection? How far does that go back? How did that lead you along? I know you said you like to know how things work, but how did that connection to liturgy come about? Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. You want to start that question over again?
Sure. So in your book, you stated that you've always had a strong connection to liturgy.
Right.
So what was that process like? I know you said you like how things work.
Right.
How did liturgy bring you to where you are now?
Well, I made the assumption when I first decided to I come to the conclusion that Catholicism was true and I wanted to become Catholic. And I always liked, but even before that, even when I was still kind of outside the church as far as doctrine goes, I always liked Catholic style of worship. I always liked the liturgy. And I thought it was because growing up, when I was a young child, we attended a Presbyterian church when I was growing up. And so I was a high Presbyterian church, so it was, entrance with a choir, and it was very liturgical. And I thought that's what it was that was drawing me, and so I went to a few different. I went to backed up Presbyterian church. I went to an Anglican church. I went to a couple of different churches, but it wasn't really liturgy that was drawing me. It was the Eucharist as the center of the liturgy, you know. But I do love liturgy. I the more beautiful the liturgy, the better for me. I recently started attending Latin Mass just here and there, and it is amazing. And then I've gone a few times to a Byzantine Rite Catholic church, and that's just like a whole other experience. But yeah, the thing I love about the liturgy is nothing. When you go to a Catholic church and you go to a Catholic Mass, for anyone that's not familiar with the Mass, non-Catholic, they can walk in and they can be very lost. They come in and they go, "What's going on here?" These people have funny clothes on and they're singing in bad singing voices, like the priest when he sings his parts, like it doesn't really sound like, why is he singing? And all these different things going on, and it can be very disorienting. But everything that happens in a Catholic Mass, and that's part of like wanting to know why things work, not just seeing them work. Every single thing that happens in a Catholic Mass isn't there arbitrarily. It isn't there by chance. The Vatican didn't just decide like, hey, we're gonna have these guys wear robes and carry a candle. Like there's a reason
Right.
there. It's not like and not to knock it, but like the local mega church, they
Why do you think that
back
there? Why do you?
to, and that was written, when was the first apology written? 150 AD. So
Right.
its liturgy is really just, it captures when I go into a liturgical church, it's all the way back, and that's special. And then it also links back with the Old Testament liturgy from the temple.
Right. So why do you think? As we're breaking up again, I'm sorry.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Okay, I can. Not sure what's going on today. Sorry.
Sorry.
So, why do you think some have a dislike for liturgy? What do you think that kind of goes back to?
I think it. I guess it probably goes back to the Protestant Reformation. The liturgy seemed in Western Europe. In Western Europe, the Catholic Church was the only church. In the East, you had the Oriental Orthodox and the Eastern Orthodox. But in Western Europe, it was only the Catholic Church, and so liturgy seemed very Catholic. It didn't seem just anciently Christian. It seemed like it was just a Catholic thing,
Right.
And they wanted to break away from that. And I think really it goes back to that. And now people have just been conditioned. I think a lot of it, especially in America, here in America, we have, you got your church on every corner. There's a church, and you pick and choose. And people choose their churches not based on the truth contained within. They pick their churches on, oh, I like this guitar player, or oh, I like this singer, or oh, this guy does really good sermons. Sometimes they pick them based on, if it's a Methodist or Episcopalian or Presbyterian or Lutheran. But really, the mainline Protestant denominations are kind of going by the wayside. And it's just non-denominational, which is, Baptist in name, everything but name. And they're going to these churches not based on who contains the truth. All of Christianity contains shades of truth and, a lot of truth, because they've got the Bible and they've got Jesus, just like it talks about in the Catechism or
Right.
Lumen Gentium,
Right.
So the Catholic Church contains the fullness of truth, we say. But, like a Lutheran church might have 90% of the truth. I don't know what the number would be. But I'm not trying to knock them, but I think a lot of people choose churches based upon personal taste and not upon rock solid. So if your taste is kind of a short attention span, you want to go in there, sing a couple of songs, and then listen to an inspirational, talk, like a TED talk, well, then you'll go
Right.
to this church down the street. If you want, so people pick and choose, and that's a lot of people said that to me when I was becoming Catholic. Even Catholics said that to me. They're like, well, you don't have to become Catholic. You can go, if you don't like that church, you can go choose this church. Or after a while, if you've been Catholic for a while, you don't like your priest anymore, you can always come down the street to Living Waters. And I said, no, it isn't about that. It's not about, it's about, absolute truths. It's not about who has the best fog machine. But I
Right.
think we've been conditioned in America that Christian culture in America is very dominantly Protestant, and it's also dominant non-denominational now. Since like the year 2000, I guess, and that's just what people's used to, is kind of that. It feels like it's spontaneous worship with a spontaneous, but it's not. It's liturgy too. It's just their own style of liturgy.
Right. And I talk to people about that all the time. I have a friend of mine who's a Southern Baptist pastor, and he meets twice a week with his staff to plan out the service for the next Sunday. It's planned. There's order to it. There's order to it regardless. Now, to your point, I mean, it's about absolute truth. It's about, the body, blood, soul, divinity in the Eucharist.
Right.
So what would you say to maybe someone who's listening, who maybe finds themselves maybe bored at Mass,
Right.
not really understanding what goes on? What would you say to them?
That was, well, and a lot of times too, and especially in America, a lot of our priests are foreign-born priests now, and which is fine. I don't have a problem with foreign, but sometimes people have a hard time. And my own parish has 3 priests from Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda, and I don't know if it's the Holy Spirit or what it is, but the second they come on board, I could hear them crystal clear.
Right.
Like when they're speaking, I can hear it's like they're talking right to me, and they have strong accents, but I can hear no problem whatsoever. But there was one parish I was going to, and my grandmother looked at me. We were on our way there. She's Catholic, and she said, I like this priest. He's a really nice guy. He was from, I want to say, India. He's a really nice priest, but when he's giving a homily, I can't understand a word he says, and I zone out. And I said, yeah, I said, it can be hard. I said, but here's the thing. The Mass is a Mass. Whether you can understand the homily or not, you can go to a Mass in Portuguese and not speak a word of Portuguese, and it's still the representation of Christ's sacrifice on Calvary. And it's still, so we get to the church and we go in, and it was a different priest, and he gives a homily on how the Mass is a representation of Christ. Like everything I was saying, and she looked at me when we were leaving and said, "Did you know he was going?" I said, "I did not. No, but I guess you needed to hear that." But it's, some people get bored at Mass, and I've sat through as many beautiful liturgies I've sat through some very terrible liturgies too. Sometimes you'll go to a church and it's just bad,
Right.
But if that is a priest that was validly ordained and he's validly saying the words of consecration, it doesn't matter how bad the music is. It doesn't matter if you're the only person there in a giant cathedral, like nobody's showing up at this parish, and you're the only person there. It doesn't matter. None of that matters, because if you really understand what the Mass is, and that's really one of the reasons why I wrote the book, is if you understand what's happening in front of your eyes, if you could see spiritually what's happening, it's the meeting of heaven and earth coming together on the altar in the hands of the priest. And it's the body, blood, soul, and divinity. It's literally the source and summit of our faith that he is consecrating on the altar that we are about to receive within minutes of the consecration. If you really understand that, Mass can never be boring. It can't be boring, because you're in the presence of all the saints and angels. Just imagine that. When they say, together with all the company of angels, we join in your hymn of unending praise, we acclaim, holy, holy, holy Lord God of hosts. That isn't just flowery language. That's not just a metaphor. That is literally what's happening. All the angels and saints, so think of every saint you've ever heard of, is gathered around the altar, you're joining heaven and earth together, and you're singing the Sanctus with all of heaven. So I mean, if you can be bored through that, I don't, I don't know,
Right.
I don't know what to tell you.
So once we understand what goes on in the mass, like you said, it's life changing
Right.
because
And
you
yeah,
realize the brevity of what is happening. It's our meeting of heaven and earth worshiping the Son of God right there on the altar.
right. And that's why I chose that image for the front on the cover of my book. I chose it's a painting by Raphael, the Disputation of the Blessed Sacrament, and it's an altar with a monstrance on it with a host inside of it, and it's all on the bottom is all for for people that's listening. For on the bottom is all bishops and popes and different religious figures that are alive, and then right above is kind of a thin cloud and the Holy Spirit descending, and then Jesus sitting on the throne with John the Baptist, the Blessed Mother, and God the Father all around him, and then all the angels and saints surrounding him from there. So that's like a visual image. That's what I wanted people to see when they read the book. Everything I'm talking about is on the cover
Right.
in that painting.
Well, again, we're talking with Charles Johnston, and Charles, I thank you for taking some time to talk about your book and about the Mass.
No problem.
Where can my listeners learn more about you?
I have a website. It's nowthatimcatholic.com. You can find everything on there, and I'm on Facebook now that I'm at facebook.com/Catholic Convert 2016, and the book is available on Amazon.
Yeah, and again, congrats on the success. It's still doing pretty well from what I see. So that's just awesome. It means more people are learning about the Mass and lives are being changed. So God bless you for your work on that.
Thank you very much.
All right, then. Thank you very much for joining me. God bless you.
Thank you. Bye.